So my name is Caitlin Bigsby. I'm Director of Solution Marketing here at Cipher, and I spent quite a bit of my career as a business consultant for a major LMS. And so I've worked with a lot of customers on their compliance needs, and I think I've got a pretty good understanding of some of the challenges that you face. So let's hope I've come up with some good ideas to help you manage those challenges. So one of the things I want to do a refresher on, I mean, we all know compliance training, we all know that training, that just has to be done, but let's just do a quick refresher about why we do compliance training. A big one is to avoid some of the fines related to non-compliance. A KPMG study estimated that some of the average compliance fine in a regulated industry is $3.8 million. And that's just a fine. There's also exposure to threats like cybersecurity risks. We had a major retailer here in Canada that was locked down of all their retail operations for 5 days last year because of a malicious actor that brought down all of their payment gateways. So there's reputational cost, there's business cost, and then like just staying operational is all tied back to that training that we ask employees and contractors to do every day. So I think sometimes we get really focused on the make them the take it, tick the box, but we have to remember that there's actually more to it than that. It's about avoiding fines, it's about avoiding risk, and it's about staying operational and staying safe. So the first topic we're going to talk about is how to create a culture of accountability. The learning and development managers really can only do so much. You're in charge of getting the learning out to people. You're in charge of making that feasible and easy to do. But this is much bigger than you, and it's really we need to have everybody on board to really create that culture to make sure people are taking the time to do the training, that people understand why it really matters. So that is why I think it is really important to step back and reinforce why this training is happening. We're doing training for personal safety and security, those OSHA training courses, those, forklift safety courses, whatever safety courses you have at your business, again, are not just about checking a box or not just about making sure you don't get in trouble. They're about making sure people don't get hurt. And that is for the well-being of the employees who are taking it, and as well for the organization overall. Talk about that organizational risk and reputation. You do not want to be known as the organization that allowed money laundering to happen, or whatever other sort of major violation of regulations in your industry. This could really harm your reputation. And so by preventing that and keeping everybody on board and doing what they're supposed to do, that's everybody's job is secure, and the business can keep thriving. And the operational consistency. These are for the compliance training that maybe aren't subject to external control or external sanctions, but are about what the business needs from their employees to understand so that they can do the work and do it consistently so that the operation thrives. So really communicating out to everybody at the organization that, again, we're not just checking a box, we're not just trying to stay under the radar of the regulators. We're actually trying to make sure that this business thrives and that everybody's safe, and that things operate the way they're supposed to. So that's a good message to communicate out and remind people. So I've got 5 tips though for creating a culture of accountability. And that is number one, set the clear deadlines and communicate them. So do that early on. Sort of just push out the training, say it's there, make sure that there's a company-wide blast or an email out to the organization, to the people affected, saying that we have assigned you a course. We have realistic, but these deadlines, but they are firm. They must be met. Again, this is for the well-being, whatever the reasons for that training that you're pushing out. You want to communicate that it's firm, that it has to happen by then. Communicate the importance of the training, what is accomplished by doing this training, why it matters to the organization, and continue to reinforce those deadlines. So don't just do it in the email blast when the training is assigned. Also, you want to reinforce it when you're onboarding. Say you are going to have to take compliance training on a regular basis. We take it very seriously here. It is critical. It's critical that you complete it on time, but also to manager briefings. I'm going to talk more about involving managers a little further along, but we treat this always as an employee issue, but it's also, I think we all know, a manager issue. If employees don't feel like they have the time to prioritize training, they won't. They're going to prioritize other things. So make sure that the managers are looped in and also understand the importance of completing this training. So that's the second one here, involving the managers and leadership. make sure managers understand what this training is for, and try to nip any of those sort of eye roll, yeah, 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 kind of stuff in the bud. Make sure that they understand that it's important. Check in with their teams, let them know where their teams stand, let them know how their team performed last year, and that whether or not you that was good or you expect better from them, and really highlight the compliance metrics by team. Really put managers on the spot, so that those teams that are doing the compliance training on time are recognized for it, and those teams that are lagging behind are called on the carpet. I think having managers are one of your best assets in getting compliance training done on time. If they can prioritize it and make sure everybody takes the time for it, it is far more likely to get done. And then, of course, reward that. So acknowledge the team completions, thank the team manager for their cooperation, and maybe do some other rewards. Track progress and escalate strategically. So this is where all your compliance reports are going to come into play. Don't wait to the last minute to see where you are. Keep steady monitoring. Look for those teams maybe that are falling behind, and be prepared to do some follow up. Think maybe the best approaches are for follow up. Think about who you're going to need to get in touch with if the completion doesn't happen on time. Really take advantage of system nudges and reminders. There's a lot of automation available to you in Cypher that will help you remind people when to take it, to nudge them, if they started training but didn't quite finish it, really make sure that is set up and automated so that you don't have to do it. But do remind people tend to, leave things to the last minute, and they do need those reminders to get things done. But escalate when needed. Be ready to escalate with needed. You can start first by alerting the manager. If you feel like you don't have a cooperative manager, you can go a little higher than that. But also with that escalation, be really clear about what you need to see happen, that you need to see that training done. It needs to be completed by X date, with X amount of time spent. So be prepared for all of that. And we really need to be a little bit more, this is an urgent issue with a real bottom line cost to the organization. So escalation should be something that is supported by the rest of the organization. But if that is the stick, let's look at the carrot, and that is recognizing rewarding completions. The easy way to do this is with a little bit of friendly competition with leaderboards and gamifications. You can do that by course or by team, and really shout out people who've completed. If you've got that first team where everybody's completed it, you shout them out publicly. Really make this sort of a little bit fun and a little bit of friendly competition. The second point, can be a little bit trickier again because it is a little bit outside of the L&D sphere, but again, compliance training is critical. So I think you are justified in trying to loop in other people at your organization, and that is making timely completion of required training a formal job responsibility. That is at your performance reviews. That's one of the things you should be evaluated on. Did you take your training seriously? Did you get it done on time? Managers should also be accountable. Did your team complete their training on time? And did you support them in their learning? So really make it a formal job responsibility that there's some training at this organization that just has to happen, and managers have to allow their teams to make time for it. That will go a long way in creating more of a culture of learning. And you could do this, that doesn't actually need to be just restricted to compliance training. I think you can expand that to other skills and development. Because again, if managers aren't prioritizing learning, then it tends to fall right down to the bottom of the list. And the final one is to offer some incentives to teams, whether there's a little reward. It can just be as simple as a silly little trophy, or something a little bit bigger. But really try to recognize and reward people as they complete it. And then the final one is to review and refresh your content regularly. People are going to be a lot more positive about their learning if they feel that it's relevant to them. So I think we can all reflect back on a really hokey piece of training we had to take at some point in our life that just felt weird and stilted, or didn't, but didn't quite apply to our workplace situation. So trying to make it feel a bit more relevant and help them really understand why they're taking it will also then tie back and drive home, why we are doing this, if it really sort of relates and feels current. Break it up to make it a bit more readable and consumable. Again, sometimes it's really hard for people to set aside a full, hour, 2 hours, whatever they need to take their compliance training. It's a whole lot easier to do it in a series of chunks. And it feels a little less overwhelming. And really take advantage of design cues, visual cues to make it easy for people to understand. And then use feedback surveys to learn how you can improve future compliance programs. I think people like to be involved in their training. They like to feel like their voices are heard, and you might get some really valuable insights that will help meet the needs of the people that you're trying to reach. Okay, let's make compliance fun, or at least make it a little less dull and easy to do. So, three really easy ways to make compliance training easy is to make it mobile. That is, if allow people to do it on their phone so they can, tuck themselves away in the corner of a break room and just get it done while they eat lunch. Don't tether them to their desk if you don't have to. Make it bite sized. Like I mentioned, if you make it short, make it easy to consume, then that will really help people get through it. And then finally, make it clear, make it really visually appealing. We did a webinar a couple of months ago about UI and look and feel, and just how quickly people make assumptions and draw conclusions based on visual cues, and that applies to your training as well. So leverage as many of those sort of UI tips and easy consumption tips when it comes to your compliance training as well, and that will go a long way in sort of creating a positive feeling about training. Use engaging and industry specific content. Really try to go for best in class training where possible. I know there's usually two buckets for compliance training. There's stuff that's really specific to your organization, your policies, and your procedures. But there's also some stuff that is a little bit more universal. If it's based on a legal requirement, there's chances are very good that somebody out there has built some really good training. So try to take advantage of that. We have a partnership with Open Sesame, and they have a enormous library of compliance training, global, regional, multi-language, they have multiple courses for the same regulation. So you can actually have choices in the course for a specific regulation, just from Open Sesame. And the really nice thing about doing that is it's going to stay current. When you purchase it, they're going to be in charge of maintaining it, keeping it up to date, using the best course design software. And if you leverage an integration like we have, that's going to keep it automatically synced, so you're always getting the latest information. And so you have the options to choose the content that best meets your need, whether it's by tone or by format or delivery type. But regardless of where you get your content, do consider purchasing content, but really, purchase the best. I mean, if you're going to spend the money, make sure you're spending the money on the content that is going to meet the needs the best. So let's look at some proven strategies. Some of these they're going to feel like a little bit more work. That's because they are. It's going to take a little bit more effort to do this, but the payoff is enormous. The payoff will be about really sort of creating a self-motivating learners team, and it can be fun, and it'll elevate the entire L&D team across the board, not even just for your compliance training. So one strategy that people have used is called a compliance lottery, and basically everybody who completes learning on time gets entered into a draw, and pull out a name, and it's a chance to win a prize. So it creates a little bit of low excitement. It can be, it's something as simple as a $5 gift card to a coffee shop, or something silly, but it just adds a little bit of fun and adds a little bit of excitement, and doesn't really cost very much, and it's actually not really a lot of effort. You can create a group challenge. We've talked about creating team accountability and team rewards, where the first department to get to full compliance can get a prize. That's going to make people accountable to each other. So it's not just about individual accountability, it's going to be about team accountability. Friendly competition, not just between employees, but also between team leaders. And then a scavenger hunt is another way. I've worked with a lot of L&D professionals over the years who really like to do the scavenger hunt. This one, so it takes a little bit of thought, but it's a lot of fun, not just for compliance training, but for any kind of training you really want to get people to really dig in and pay attention to. So add little clues in your content, and have a form at the end, and see for those people who have spotted all the clues, and they can get even just a special badge in the system, a special little reward that can be really highly motivating for a lot of people. But it does get also people looking a little bit more closely at the content to see if they can spot them all, especially if they're silly and fun, and they kind of add a little bit of levity to the training. which leads into sort of different learning approaches. Instead of something sort of dry and boring, see if you can inject a little bit of humor into the training, some humorous videos to make it a little bit just a little bit more, again, more engaging. Um, and it kind of boosts participation sometimes, especially if they are very funny or, did you notice this? What do you think of that? It can get people who've done that, you did the training a little bit earlier to say, oh, no, you know what? You should really take it this time. It was actually pretty fun. We really, enjoyed it. Reverse mentoring is I quite like this when my son was in the trades for a time, and one of the things that always worried me in the trades is that the older workforce sometimes gets actually really a little bit lax with safety standards, and that can sort of set a bad example to the younger employees. And when you do reverse mentoring, you get the younger people who are taking the training and get them to discuss it with the older workers, and sort of share their tips on both, and sort of put the older workforce on their toes about making sure they're modeling the right kind of behavior, maybe also like learning things that maybe weren't standard when they first started, and getting the younger workforce to learn how to, some of the tips and tricks that the older workforce has learned over the years to keep themselves safe. But even if it's not outside of safety, it's just in general, getting people to kind of talk to each other and understand the need to set an example can be a helpful part to really reinforce the learning and the behavior that you want to see. And then find the mistake. It's a little bit like a scavenger hunt, except instead of just odd little cues, it's actually a way to get people to pay a little bit more closely and really cue in and listen to what they're being taught, and get them to identify where there's a mistake, and make it more gamified. And then a couple of one, this is just another different learning approach with executive scores and executive intro. So this is bringing in the leadership team and getting them to participate. So again, posting the completion rates by department or team, really shining a light on that, highlighting it, elevating it up to the executive level, and adding that gentle pressure. So reporting constantly to your C-suite about how their organization is doing, and then the VPs below them, and get them to really understand that they need to motivate their teams to complete it. They need to reinforce the completion amongst their team, and inspire them to be a part of it, and take it seriously. The other one is to involve the executives early on to, again, reinforce that message about why the compliance training is important and why it matters to the organization. Because as I went over right at the beginning of this, compliance training isn't just to check the box. It isn't just that thing we do that we, roll our eyes and try to get through it as quickly as possible. The purpose of compliance training is really to change behavior, keep people safe, keep the organization operational. So we need the executives to really reinforce why that matters and demonstrate their commitment to being a compliant organization. So how can we stay on top of compliance? That's where technology can really help you stay on top of your compliance responsibilities. So when I go over compliance training with people who are kind of new to the concept, or to really need to understand the business needs, I say compliance training usually has three hallmarks. It is required, it often has an expiration date, and it can be auditable. So let's look at what those mean and how you can leverage technology to help you manage that. When training is required, one of the technical ways you can support that need is by assigning it automatically. So you want to be able to just push it out without even thinking. Anybody who fits a certain criteria, either by region or job and region, should be pushed this training that they need to take, with a due by date, so that they know when they need to take it by. So just take that sort of thinking off your plate, and just make sure it gets pushed out automatically. You can always manage those outliers individually, but by managing the bulk of the people automatically, you reduce the chances that somebody will miss their training. If it's required, again, you're going to want to track and report it. You're going to want to make sure that people have actually done what they need to do, and you want to stay on top of it, as we talked about. So that's where tracking and reporting really come into play. So getting those notifications, getting, just a quick review of the scoring sheet to see who's completed it, but also just regular reports to see where everybody is, especially reports broken down by managers, so that you can just shoot out those reports directly to managers so they can see where their team stands, and you have an overview of where people stand. And notifications are a big part of required training. This is where we're going to remind people when they need to take it. We're going to nudge them when they've started it but haven't finished it on time. So we're going to really take advantage of automatic notifications here for required training to make people know what is expected of them, know when it's expected, and to stay on top of them until it's done. When compliance training has an expiration date, and you don't want to wait until the day to make sure it's been done, you're going to want to, first of all, make sure that that expiration date is well understood. So that's sort of setting a valid duration to it. That is, so imagine, for example, a first aid certification that's good for 365 days. You're going to want that to be defined as part of your first aid certificate so that when they complete the training, they know how long it's good for. And then you can start to trigger a bunch of actions based on that expiration date in advance of the expiration date. So people don't reach that date and suddenly they're not compliant anymore. They have some runway to get started on their training for the next round. Monitoring can be really important, particularly with expiration date. I've worked with clients where they simply could not operate if they didn't have a number, X number of people with the valid certification. So really, monitoring who's coming up for recertification, making sure they have time to go do that so that they can just, keep the doors open is really, really important. Sometimes you're going to have to bring in special instructors to do the training. So being able to monitor with reports and other fashions when people are going to expire so you can plan accordingly is really critical. So you want reporting, you want the duration dates, and you want to make sure that you can work around that. And then again, that automation, so automatically reassign training when we get to the expiration date is really helpful. So there's no thinking about it, there's no it, enrolling people or asking them to enroll it. You're just pushing it out again. So, hey, it's time to retake your training. And then that's going to kick off all those notifications that you set up and the required training. And then when training is auditable, you want to make sure that you can pass when the auditor comes knocking, that there's nothing outstanding, nothing you can't account for. So again, great reporting. You want to be able to report on who has taken what course and when, how long it's good for, when it expires, and so on, when they completed it. All of that information you want to be able to pull. So you need to that takes two pieces. That means setting up the course properly so that you can get that information tracked properly and having a really good reporting availability so that you can draw that down. Sometimes, depending on the particular kind of compliance training, you're going to need traceability to show not just what course a learner completed, but specifically the content that they took and that they engaged with it. Some places are really strict. They don't want to know just that, again, somebody got through a course. They actually want to know that the learner engaged with the course. Luckily, we have something called a learning meter that actually measures student interaction with course content, not just the block of time they spent with the window open, but actually the time they spent interacting with the content on the window, which can really help with that kind of compliance audit. And then the last piece of auditability, again, this will depend on the regulatory requirements in the industry, is security. Who not just security access to the course, although that can be important if the course content itself is proprietary, but also who can update course content and push it out. That is, again, to make sure that we aren't just having people pass or take a really lightweight kind of training course and then updating that course later on with content that the auditors will approve of. They want to know who has access to the content and kind of an audit trail of when that content was updated. So these are all pieces and elements where an LMS can really help you manage and pass your compliance audits with flying colors. So we talked about the need to create content that is current and up to date and easy to use. And I want to take a moment here to talk about Cypher Agent, which is our AI agent that can help you complete a lot of your tasks. One of those tasks is creating courses from start to finish. And when you have compliance training that is based on internal processes or documents, that could be a really big lift to turn those documents into a course that people can complete, take, that you can assess them on, that you can add gamification, and that's where Cypher Agent is really really helpful. It will take those policies that you need to share out to learners and actually allow you to turn it into an interactive course simply, within just a few minutes. So you update your content, upload your content. So this is where the subject matter expert, who often sits outside of L&D, can just pass over the documents where they've identified what needs to be done. And then you can choose the settings. You can choose how to break out the course, how many modules you want, the tone, the voice, the learner level, and actually start to build out the content. And you can add assessments. Cypher Agent can create assessments from the content itself. I don't know about you, but that's one of my least favorite things to do when I've had to build a course, is to build the assessments. An agent will do that for you. It can also add gamification elements as you need. And that will give you a complete course that you can go through. You can, tweak it, edit it, just make sure it reflects what you want. And then you make it compliant by setting those compliance settings on the back end, just as you would for any other course. But it's a really good way to make sure that your internal compliance training is created and refreshed on a regular basis without that huge lift between your subject matter experts and the L&D team. It will save you tons and tons of time getting out your internal policy things. So this is great for things like policies and procedures, standard operating things, anything that really reflects how you do business at your particular organization. As I mentioned, for things that are a little bit broader and across the board, there's usually third-party content that's available for that stuff you want to create internally. Cypher Agent is a huge, huge assist and will save you a ton of time. So just quickly step through some of the pieces. Once you've uploaded, first steps, you want to give it a topic, identify what it's going to be about, the persona, that is like the voice it's going to use when it communicates to the learners. You can set the level, the audience, the writing style. It can be professional, it can be casual, it can be whatever suits your organization's sort of culture. Simply upload the content, and you can actually extract competencies from the content here if you want to. You can choose whether or not to restrict it to the provided content or augment it with some general content. Usually for compliance, you're going to want to restrict it to the documents that you're using. And then you can extract an outline, extract a section based on that content. And finally, generate the whole thing, and it will break it out for you into the different modules that you've chosen, with quizzes by module, with as many questions as you choose. So before we go on this one, I just want to go over a few resources. We're going to make this deck available to you along with the recording so that you can download these and access these links. So don't worry that they're not here for you to click on. They will be with the follow-up presentation when I send it out. So I mentioned Cypher Agent and how you can use that to create proprietary learning. And so there's a tutorial here that will walk you through how that works. We have a really great report on the impact of compliance and breaking the rules in compliance. I'm sure you all understand how important it is, but if you need to leverage this to bring your stakeholders on board and remind them of how important it is that they participate and really reinforce this report is really, really informative. And finally, I mentioned how important automation can be in helping you manage your compliance administration. So the automation guide is here, and it will outline all the different ways you can use Cypher automation to help you manage not just compliance, but all your courses, but especially compliance. So that is here for a reference for you. So do we have any more questions? I think I saw one come in just now. I'm sure Mark is on top of it. Our next Cypher Live, that is where we do a demo of the system, is next week, and it's going to be on skills and, more importantly, how we use AI to manage skills. The one after that is going to be about creating custom reports, and next month's Cypher Pro Tips will be about measuring learning effectiveness. So I hope you'll join us for that. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's really great to have you here and help a bit more. Okay, I see a question actually that didn't get answered. Can you explain a bit more about the learning meter I mentioned that shows a learner engagement with the course content? Mark, I don't know, Mark might not be here. He had to jump to another meeting, so I'll take it. Oh, you're here? Okay, go for it.
I am here and happy to take care of it here. So the learning meter is one of our more unique features that was developed in conjunction with one of our customers. Whereas most learning platforms take a look at time spent in a course as the time between clicks, potentially monitoring whether a video has been watched or not. We have a unique ability to be able to track the focus on the browser. So being able to see whether someone is actually looking at it versus they've put a video on and played it in the background, as well as whether or not their mouse is being used and they're engaging with the content. So instead of getting a walked away from the content and let it play for 20 minutes for a 5-minute video and it shows 20 minutes, you'll only see a few seconds of time actually spent in the course. So it gives you that accurate picture of how long the person actually spent in the course.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Um, you can search our website. We do have an illustration of how the learning meter relates, and actually, I can include that in the follow-up resources, so I'll do that. And I just see we have another question about Open Sesame as a resource platform. So Cypher has said we have a partnership with Open Sesame, and we have an integration with Open Sesame. The integration is fabulous. Once you have that set up, it's easy peasy. You do it in under 3 minutes. What will happen is that the courses that you are licensed to use from Open Sesame will automatically refresh and update in Cypher Learning. So they'll be a part of your catalog. They'll be there. If there's any changes or updates to them, they'll get updated for you. And when you Open Sesame they have a few different license models. Some of them that do allow you to switch out your courses in Open Sesame every quarter. So if you want to, refresh things or try new things, you just choose which ones those are, and then again, the integration will swap them out for you just immediately. So you can. Another question that came in, we can host our content from Cypher to Open Sesame. No, it's the other way around. The Open Sesame content is going to come into Cypher. So it's going to be available in Cypher alongside all of your other courses so that your learners only have one place to go to consume their content. So for you, the administrator, the benefit is that the updates are immediate. And actually, I don't believe Open Sesame hosts learning. They're a source of content, but for you, the administrator, you can bring the content in, have it update automatically, have it create the courses within Cypher. So it does all that course creation step. It's not just the content going into a place where then you have to go create the course. It's actually going to create the course for you. And every time you update your choices within Open Sesame, those updates are going to come over. So your learners are going to log into Cypher. They're going to see the Open Sesame content alongside your proprietary content, alongside any other content you've got from any other potential vendors or that you've created in-house. So it's just a way of giving your learners one place to go and giving you as administrators just one way, a really simple way to keep everything up to date. Tom is asking if we have any other partnerships with content aggregators in addition to Open Sesame. There are a few. I can't think of them off the top of my head. If you go into your system, into the admin part of your system and look for content, you will see we have Coursera is one I can think of off the top of my head. There's a couple more, but if you check the App Store in your Cypher admin panel, you'll see some of the other partnerships we have available to you. Part of what's special with our Open Sesame partnership right now is that we do have worked on them to create some curated bundles on compliance. So it's a really easy, quick start and at a really affordable price that we've made available to our customers. But we do have other integrations. We have any other questions today before we wrap up? No, okay. Thank you so much. So we're going to get this video up and the deck up by tomorrow, and we'll send out a follow-up email to all of you so that you get a direct link to them. And watch out for the invitations to some of these other sessions, the Cypher Live about skills, Cypher Live about custom reports, and Cypher Pro Tips about measuring learning and effectiveness. And in case you're wondering what the difference is, Cypher Live is where we really just walk you through the system and how things work. Cypher Pro Tips is what you saw today, which is a little bit more sort of that, how to think about these business problems and how to tackle them more from a business approach. So those are the difference between the two. Everything is available on our website. All the recordings are there under either the Cypher Live or the Cypher Pro Tips piece. If you're looking for a really specific video, we also host these on YouTube, so you can get a direct link straight to the video. But we share all the assets that we create. I try to make sure I have some assets and helpful tips and tricks and tools for you to leverage for all of the Cypher Pro Tips. So thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.